Donald Trump's press secretary educates this clueless reporter about the brutal truth behind these deportation flights.
That the administration can prove everyone that was put on those flights to El Salvador was either a member of Tren de Agua, MS-13, or some other entity.
We've already provided the breakdown in the effort of transparency about the 261 illegal aliens who were deported. 137 of those were deported under the Alien Enemies Act. 101 of those were Venezuelans removed via Title VIII, which, as you know, are just regular immigration proceedings. And 23 of them were MS-13 Salvadorian gang members. There were also 2 MS-13 ringleaders as part of that group of 23 who President Bukele particularly expressed his gratitude for their return so he can demand justice in his home country. Jennifer.
What criteria, though, other than, say, tattoos or maybe being in the wrong place at the wrong time, are they using to determine that someone is actually a member of one of these organizations?
Intelligence and the men and women on the ground in the interior of our country who are finally being allowed to do their jobs. Their hands were tied under the previous administration, and as I said, they take their jobs very seriously. They should be trusted and respected by the American public with this operation. And of course, as I said to Kelly, the administration will provide all details to the questions that the court poses.
There is now a member of the European Parliament from France who does not think the U.S. represents the values of the Statue of Liberty anymore. They want the Statue of Liberty back. So is President Trump going to send the Statue of Liberty back to France?
Absolutely not. And my advice to that unnamed low-level French politician would be to remind them that it's only because of the United States of America that the French are not speaking German right now. So they should be very grateful to our great country. Kelly.
Is the administration prepared to give the court what it wants in terms of the time of the flights that departed, that went to El Salvador, and some of those details that the judge is asking for in trying to determine the timing? Clearly, the 5 named individuals were not deported.
That's right.
Compliance. But looking more broadly, wanting to know about the timing of flights and so forth, because the verbal order did say turn around the flights if there's an issue. So is the administration prepared to provide that information?
I'm prepared to provide it right now. All of the planes that were subject to the written order, the judge's written order, took off before the order was entered in the courtroom on Saturday. And the administration will, of course, be happily answering all of those questions that the judge poses in court later today.
And for people who have due process questions about making certain that there wasn't anyone who was swept up who did not meet the criteria that you laid out, is there a way for the administration to provide more detail about how that was determined, who the individuals were that met this deportation order?
Yes, I can assure the American people that Customs and Border Patrol and ICE and the Department of Homeland Security are sure about the identities of the individuals who were on these planes and the threat that they pose to our homeland. They take this incredibly seriously. They are putting their lives on the line to deport these designated terrorists from our country, and they should be trusted to do that. And that's exactly what the American people elected this president to do.
Thanks, Caroline. Just to follow up on that, then, so you're saying definitively that the administration can prove everyone that was put on those flights to El Salvador was either a member of Tren de Agua, MS-13, or some other entity?
We've already provided the breakdown in the effort of transparency about the 261 illegal aliens who were deported. 137 of those were deported under the Alien Enemies Act. 101 of those were Venezuelans removed via Title VIII, which, as you know, are just regular immigration proceedings. And 23 of them were MS-13 Salvadorian gang members. There were also 2 MS-13 ringleaders as part of that group of 23 who President Bukele particularly expressed his gratitude for their return so he can demand justice in his home country.
I'll tell you what, we are extremely fortunate that El Salvador is becoming one of the greatest allies towards the United States because they don't have to deal with all these judiciary injunctions. In fact, El Salvador was the murder capital of the world just a short 5, 6, 7 years ago. Now it's one of the safest places in the world, and that's all due to President Bukele's strong leadership on crackdown on crime. That's what Donald Trump's trying to do in this country. But the issue here is when you attack the swamp like this, the swamp's going to come fighting back, and they're going to try anything in their power just to slow this man down, which is exactly what they're doing, because they know the more undocumented people we have in this nation, and the less emphasis we have on only American citizens voting, more fraud we're going to have in these elections. And who do you think these migrants are going to vote for? The people trying to kick them out, or the people giving them all these benefits, putting them up in five-star hotels in New York City? It's clear as day what they're trying to do.
Other than, say, tattoos or maybe being in the wrong place at the wrong time, are they using to determine that someone is actually a member of one of these organizations?
Intelligence and the men and women on the ground in the interior of our country who are finally being allowed to do their jobs. Their hands were tied under the previous administration, and as I said, they take their jobs very seriously. They should be trusted and respected by the American public with this operation. And of course, as I said to Kelly, the administration will provide all details to the questions that the court poses. Jennifer.
One more follow-up on that. Can you say how much the U.S. is paying El Salvador to imprison these Venezuelans? And then a different question on Russia. I was wondering if you could give us an update on the ceasefire negotiations, and is there anything you can share on the list that Putin passed along to President Trump for the things he's requesting?
Sure. To your first question, it was approximately $6 million to El Salvador for the detention of these foreign terrorists. And I would point out that is pennies on the dollar in comparison to the cost of life and the cost it would impose on the American taxpayer to house these terrorists in maximum security prisons here in the United States of America. And I would echo the message of our Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, who expressed his gratitude to President Bukele and El Salvador's government for their cooperation in this deal. As for Russia, as you know, the president announced last night on Air Force One on his return from his very busy weekend in Florida that he will be speaking to President Putin tomorrow. I won't get ahead of those negotiations, but I can say we are on the 10th yard line of peace, and we've never been closer to a peace deal than we are in this moment. And the president, as you know, is determined to get one done. Sure, Caitlin.
I have two questions for you. One on the flights, but first on the president's post overnight, saying that the pardons that were issued by President Biden preemptively to members of the January 6th committee, that they're now null and void. Have attorneys here at the White House told President Trump that he has the legal authority to undo a pardon simply because it was signed by auto pen, as he said?
The president was begging the question that I think a lot of journalists in this room should be asking about whether or not the former president of the United States, who I think we can all finally agree was cognitively impaired. I know it took people some time to finally admit that, but we all know that to be true, as evidenced by his disastrous debate performance against President Trump during the campaign. I digress on that. But the president was raising the point that did the president even know about these pardons? Was his legal signature used without his consent or knowledge? And that's not just the president or me raising those questions, Caitlin. According to the New York Post, there are Biden officials from the previous White House who raised those questions and wondered if the president was even consulted about his legally binding signature being signed onto documents. And so I think it's a question that everybody in this room should be looking into, because certainly that would propose perhaps criminal or illegal behavior if staff members were signing the President of the United States autograph without his consent.
Is on the record talking about issuing preemptive pardons to these people.
But was he aware of his signature being used on every single pardon? That's a question you should ask the Biden White House.
Is there any evidence on that he wasn't aware of it?
You're a reporter. You should find out.
Okay,
Sean.
On the flights, so I have a question on the timeline of the flights. You keep talking about the judge's written order, which hit the docket Saturday night at about 7:26 p.m. But he issued a verbal order before that at about 6:45 and 6:48 p.m. based on the court hearing. A verbal order from the bench. Does the White House feel the need to comply with a verbal order from this judge?
Again, as I said, all of the planes subject to the written order of this judge departed U.S. soil, U.S. territory before the judge's written order.
But what about the verbal order, which of course carries the same legal weight as a written order, and said for the planes to turn around if they were
Well,
in the air?
there's actually questions about whether a verbal order carries the same weight as a legal order, as a written order, and our lawyers are determined to ask and answer those questions in court. Sean.
Hey, so on Friday, the president suggested at length that it should be illegal to criticize judges. but he has repeatedly criticized judges who rule against him, and Elon Musk is calling for impeachment of judges who have opposed the administration. So how are those two things not in conflict?
I have not heard the president talk about impeaching judges. I know you mentioned Mr. Musk's tweet, but I have not heard the president of the United States ask that. Mary.
Hey, thanks, Caroline. I wanted to ask about this video I saw this morning set to the tune of, I believe, Closing Time, about deportations of illegal migrants. What's the strategy behind the White House's videos they've been putting out on this, and can you kind of talk us through the thinking on these videos?
Sure. I think the White House and our entire government clearly is leaning into the message of this president. And we are unafraid to double down and to take responsibility and ownership of the serious decisions that are being made. The president was elected with an overwhelming mandate to launch the largest mass deportation campaign in American history.
The thing is, if Donald Trump never mentioned mass deportations during the campaign trail, I might side with the Democrats and the liberals. But this was one of his main campaign promises. I'm going to make sure American citizens are the only people in this country. I'm going to deport all these violent criminals, make sure our taxpayer money is not being wasted on these people any longer, and we're going to have safer streets, and we're going to have a far more prosperous economy. He talked about this at every single rally on the campaign trail. 77 million Americans signed up for that. They voted for that. That's what we need to turn around our country. That is going to put us on the right track. But the Democrats want to tell you that if one of the 700 federal judges all across America have any issue with Donald Trump or his personal policy or his agenda, then Trump can't follow through on his campaign promise. Give me a break. Do you think that all of these judges actually are upholding the law and the Constitution as they see fit? Or do you think some of these people are partisan hacks and they're just trying to stop Trump? Just the sheer fact of the matter is, a few months ago, Donald Trump was fighting for his life in the courtroom because these people were trying to imprison him for the rest of his time on this earth. The American people voted for a mandate of change. We want a safer country, we want a stronger economy, we want secure borders, and we don't want overseas wars. That's what Donald Trump brings. Everybody knows it. The thing is, if you watch all these Democratic talk shows, they're going to say that Donald Trump is some far-right radical Republican, when in reality, he's just a centrist. There are so many prominent Democrats that left that party to join Donald Trump and his cause because they can see his sole interest is in you and I, making our lives better. Do you think these radical judges want these violent criminals on their street, on their block? Do you think these judges will invite them over to their house for dinner? No, absolutely not. These people are just trying to instigate chaos all across the country just because they have blind hatred towards Donald Trump. And the thing is, I would be very curious to see who appointed these judges to these positions in the first place. What president? Because I have a funny feeling Trump did not appoint any of them. But yeah, let me know your thoughts on this down below. What country do you think will be the biggest ally towards Donald Trump in these next coming 4 years? Because I'll tell you what, I think El Salvador is going to be the perfect right-hand man for Donald Trump because this country is on a colossal rise, and I cannot wait to see what this partnership has in store these next coming years. But yeah, if you enjoyed, make sure to smash that like, comment, subscribe, and wish you guys nothing but the best. Till next time.